What's up, guys? West Coast Picks here, and earlier today I had a request to show how I make security pins, how I turn them down and get such good details. And I have done a live stream of a lock build, but I never really got super close, and I talked a lot about what I was doing, but didn't really have the capability of showing you on the live stream. There's no focus or anything like that with the software I use. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is normally I record from this big tripod sitting here on the edge of the desk, but I've pulled out this little tiny tripod, and I got it right close to the pin lathe, so I should be able to get nice and close and show you guys how I do this. Well, it's close enough that I'm probably going to bump it a couple times when I'm reaching for tools and stuff, so if I do, I apologize. But at least with this one, not live stream with a regular camera, I can actually focus in on what I'm working on, and you guys can see it pretty much the whole time. I'll go a little bit over the tools and my setup here. This is the pin lathe, which sits in this this box here that I made. Actually, it's 2 boxes from the dollar store, and I took them apart and put an extra hinge in there for the lid and put that hasp on there so I can close it up and latch it. Anyway, what this is just a 12-volt cordless drill, and it's important that if you do this, you're going to use a cordless drill because it has this metal motor. The casing and everything is separate. On a 120 volt or plug-in drill, usually the windings and the coils on the outside are part of the case, and you aren't able to bone it out like you are with one of these. Also, most corded drills have a keyed chuck. This one is a keyless chuck, which makes it a lot easier to put the pins in and out. All I did was bone out the old drill, put it in there, and over here I've got a power supply that runs the drill. Actually, I think this is a 14-volt drill and a 15-volt power supply, but you could do this with a 12-volt drill or whatever. Just match your power supply to your drill, and you should be fine. The inside here is just very little wiring. It's just to a switch, and then I keep all my extra files and saw blades and stuff in there that I use for making the lock. So I have this little padded case over it to quieten it down a little bit. It gets pretty loud without it on there. So it does take a little bit of the sound away. The tools I'll be using are, straight up bastard file, a smaller hand file, flat hand file. And it's very important that you have, decent files. You can't use cheap ones. I've had a couple cheap ones I've tried. They just don't work. Got to use decent ones. I think these are Nicholson's. They probably cost like 21 bucks for the set or something like that. But, it's definitely worth it. And you're going to want to make sure that one of these short sides here actually has the file on it. A lot of them, the cheaper ones, don't have the file pattern on the short side. They only have it on the long side. So as you can see, it's on the long side there. If I can get this thing to focus. There we go. And it's on that short side. It's not on that side, so you got to make sure at least one of those short sides has that, and that's pretty much essential for what I do anyway. What else? I have some coping saw blades, so that's what these are. They're coping saw blades. This is just an old one that's broke, and this is a newer one because this one was getting a little dull with all the sawing I've been doing. I do use tweezers every now and then, so I got one of those there. This is a smaller coping saw blade. It's the thinnest one I could possibly find, but then at the very end of this, I don't know if you can make that out or not, I actually filed it down even thinner. That's how I get those very, very thin serrations on there. And that works pretty good. In this little case here, I have drill bits. That's what I use for my pin and pins, making my pin and pins. I actually have a couple in there that are already made, but I'll be making some, so you guys will see me do that. And this is actually quite a long preamble for what's going to be a pretty long video. This is the lock I'm going to be making. It's a Schlage FC4 6-pin, obviously, and as you can see the bitting, it's got a nice deep pin right there, which is going to be our overset trap. I worked out all the drivers. Some of those will be inner portions or outer portions for pin and pins, and we'll figure it out as we go, guys. I have a general idea for this lock, and I'll just show you how I make all the pins. So basically I'm going to be doing a good plethora of pins here. So let me get you set up in the tripod. Make sure we got a good view without getting in my way. Focus in, and that should be good. Hopefully I don't bump the camera too much, guys. It's kind of like right over top of what I'm doing, but anyway, let's try to get at this. I hope that's enough light for you guys to see what's going on. It should be. Zoomed in pretty good. So let's start with pin 1. Usually I do all my drivers first, and then I move on to my I do all my key pins first, then I move on to my drivers. So basically for the key pins, unless I have an overset trap, they're usually all serrated, or like maybe every now and then I'll do a bomb style pin. So I'll do some serrations first. These ones are pretty small, so I'll just chuck it up in the vise. This is probably only going to get like one serration here. Hopefully it's not going to be an issue having this camera in the way. And it's going to get loud as I turn this machine on, so sorry about that, guys. Maybe turn your volume down or something. Warning to all you headphone guys. Alright, here we go. Alright, so now that I've got a couple serrations in there, alright, let's see if that works. I'd hate to lose all this footage, but at least it's out of my way now, and I can show you guys better what I'm doing with better lighting. Anyway, now that I put a couple serrations in here, I just used this thin, very thin coping saw blade that I've filed down even thinner. I got 2 serrations on here. Now what I'll do, instead of just leaving it like that, usually when you cut material away from the pin, you can feel the edges, and it causes material to come up and out of the serrations, and it actually makes the pin wider. If I was to put this in the cylinder right now, chances are it would get stuck. So I usually have little pieces of sandpaper here. This is just 600 grit sandpaper, and I just give it a quick sanding. So that polishes the pin up and actually makes it nice and perfect fit for the cylinder. So that's a serration, which is pretty easy. I just try to make them as evenly spaced as possible. Start as close to the top as you can without messing the top up. This one's going to be our overset trap. As you can tell, it's a very long pin, and when it's in the cylinder, it's like less than a millimeter from the top. So this is going to be our overset trap, and with those, you're going to want to do for an overset trap. You could do T-pins and stuff like that, but lately I've been doing spools, nice deep spools, and then I taper the top a little bit. So I'm going to do that. To make a spool, I usually start with the metal. It's the miniature hacksaw blade, and I carve out two serrations about 1 millimeter apart, and then I take the middle out with the flat saw. So I'll show you guys how I do that step by step here. Alright, as you saw, I took quite a few strokes off with the hacksaw blade, and that's because I want to get as deep as I can. Well, not as deep as I can, but as deep as I'm willing to go with the hacksaw. So I have less to take out with the file. So now it looks like a serrated pin, a deeply serrated pin, but I just take that middle part out with this flat short edge of this hand file here. So I'll do that now. And you're going to lose your pin sometimes with this setup. And a Dremel, you can do all this stuff with a Dremel, but it's not as nicely situated. The downfall of this is sometimes the pin slips out. It's not a big deal, you just stop and put it back in. Alright, so now that I've taken that middle portion out, I have what looks like a nice spool, but if you look closely, the edges they contour up to both sides. So I take my saw and I just smooth those out, make them even with the rest of the inside of the spool. Doesn't take very much, a couple strokes, and then I will finish it off with the sand. Just take those edges off, and normally you could stop there, but like I said, I like to taper these a little bit just to make it easier for you to slip into a false set. So let's do that now. Basically, to taper them, I just put it on like a 30-degree angle. 45 I find is a little too much. You want to do about a 30. And kind of round the edge there, but don't touch the top of the pin because that is where your drivers sit and that's the actual depth of this pin. So if you touch that top, you're going to change the depth of the pin and it won't function and lock properly. So take care not to touch the very top, just the sides on about a 30-degree angle, and we'll see what we can do here. And that's about it. It's just a little tapered. Now I'm going to finish it off with the sandpaper. Again, don't touch the very top. You're going to want to go on the sides only. There we go. That is our overset trap. I'll show you all these pins after, but you probably have a pretty good zoom in of what that looks like already. Hopefully if I set up the camera properly. This one we're going to do just another serration. So if we're going to do one serration, we're going to use the thicker saw, the hacksaw, and this is a miniature hacksaw. It's called. It's actually thinner than a regular hacksaw blade, but it is a hacksaw blade. And this is what I use for the wider serrations. So we'll do one of these on here. As you can see, it's nice and deep, and now I'm going to finish it up with sandpaper. And we have a nice serration there. Alright, I'm just going to double check, make sure I'm still in frame here, guys. Yeah. Sometimes I tend to move this around a little bit, but as long as you guys can still see what I'm doing. We'll get another pin in here. And this one we're just going to do another two serrations, two of the smaller serrations. Make sure I'm still focused in there. I believe it is. About as good as it's going to get. All right. Finish it up with the sandpaper. And the sandpaper does wear down after a while, so there's another 2 serrations. And let's switch it up. This one will do a bomb style pin. So to do the bomb style pin, by the way, I'm putting all of these pins in the pointy side into the chuck because you're not really doing much work on that side. So we have the shear line to the outside. And for a bomb style pin, basically all I do is I take the short file and I put it on a 45-degree angle and just file it out and leave probably about 1/2 millimeter untouched at the tip there. Again, with this setup, I do lose the pin every now and then. It's not a big deal. I just stop and put it back in. Alright, so now I have the 45 degree angle, about 1/2 millimeter untouched at the top here. I will take my hacksaw blade and I will square it up, which means I'll put it to this edge closest to the chuck and just take the roundness out of it. If you just hold the blade flat up against the pin, you'll see what I mean. It'll just take it down flat. That flattens the pin out, and I will just hit it with the sandpaper. And we have a bomb style pin. Nice little bomb. We'll check him out later after I finish everything up. We'll zoom in. And this one, we're going to do a pin and pin. I usually don't do pin and pins on key pins, but for demonstration purposes I will. So first, normally I will do the outer first, so the collar first, the part with the hole in it. I do have one pre-done and it's probably about the size I want, so we'll just use this one for now, but I will do another one for the driver so you guys can see how I drill holes. So first I would make my collar, which is going to be this one, and then I would, basically you're just making a T-pin to the size of your collar. So what I do for that is I use a hacksaw blade and I just go on the side and I take it down about as deep as I need it, and then I finish it off with a file, so I'll show you. So if you see, I actually started it with a serration and they just took the edge off because that was easier. Sometimes you can just start like I was trying at first, so you could just start on the side, but it was having problems catching. So anyway, it's not deep enough yet. We'll keep making it deeper. checking it, because what I want is it to come up to the same level. I don't want it to be a T-pin or anything. I just want it to be an extra piece on that pin. I think it's deep enough now. I just got to square it up with the file. Could be just a hair longer. So I'm going to do it with the file instead of using the blade, or the saw, because the saw will take off more. So I'm just going to use this part of the file and push into the pin. A couple strokes and test it again, and we are perfect. Alright, so this pin is done. I'm just going to polish it off with the file a little bit, make it nice and smooth, and then I'm going to hit it with the sandpaper. So if you notice, I did the inner part with the sandpaper too. That just helps it fit better and move better. So we have our pin and pin. There's our collar that I had pre-made, but don't worry, I'll show you how I do those. And basically just a big T-pin that collar sits on. And now we have a nice pin and pin key pin. Again, it's essential that you don't touch the top of these pins, the part that goes to the shear line, because you will mess up the spacing. Alright, so now we're up at the top. And the first pin we're going to do is actually, we're going to make a pin and pin. So I will pull out my little box of drivers here, or not even drivers, they're just regular pins, because I fixed the ends anyway. And we're going to just get a regular key pin, chuck it in the vise, and these are 1/16 drill bits. And basically I just try to start these by hand. It's not always easy, but you have two sides of the pin, so if you fail, just flip it over and try the other side. And then if you fail again, just file a bit off, try again. If you screw the pin up so much, you just take another pin out and start again. So here we go, guys. So I've actually gotten pretty good at this. You can see I actually got it right on the first try. If you don't get it right, the drill bit will wobble, and it'll wobble back and forth, which means you know you're not on center. You'll have to try again. But I actually got it centered on the first try. Alright, so now that I've got it started, it gets really hard to push it through with your hands. So I will take a pair of pliers, and I'll put the drill bit in the pliers, and then push it through with the pliers. It makes it a lot easier. It's easier on your hands, and you can get better grip on it and more strength. So let's finish this off. Alright, so if you guys saw, I was getting these streamers out here, these long metal streamers, and that's what you want to see when you're drilling out these pins. That means you're dead center. If you get like a bunch of flaky stuff, you're probably off a little bit. It won't make that big of a difference, but this is what you want to see. This is exactly perfect. If you're working on a lathe, you can see I was doing some more some other day, but that's exactly what you want to see. That means that you are dead center. So I am dead center on this pin. Before I pull it out and play with the other side, which I'm going to true the other side, I'm going to true this side first because there's a bit of deflection from the drill hole. And I'll flip it over, and as you can see, the other side, a little rough from where the drill pushed through. It's sharp and everything. It looks like a bullet went through it. We will finish that up. So, just going to show you guys, I actually got that pretty damn perfect. Probably one of the best ones I've done in a while. It is dead center on both sides, which is awesome. Anyway, that is the collar, and now I'm going to, depending on what you want to do for your collar, this one I'm going to, what am I going to do to this one? We'll put some serrations in it, and we'll reduce the diameter on the bottom to make kind of like a wedding cake when we get our center pin in there. So let's first get a couple serrations in one side, and then we'll flip it over and reduce the diameter on the other side. Here we go, guys. Alright, it's really important you don't want to go too deep with these because you have taken the middle out of this pin. There's not a lot of meat left there, so you just want to go deep enough that you get some nice serrations in there, and they come into play in the lock, catch on any threading or anything. I'm going to pull it out a bit, I'm going to sand it, and then we'll flip it over and reduce the diameter on the other side. Alright, we'll flip her over. We're going to reduce the diameter here, just on the last millimeter of this pin. To make it easier, I'm going to put a serration there, and then I'm going to file off the outside of that serration. So let's go ahead. So I don't know if you guys can see that. We'll take a closer look after, but that is the reduced diameter on the bottom of that pin, and then a couple serrations on the top. So that'll actually go this way to the shear line. That part will be on the shear line, and it'll be in a T-pin. So we'll create that part right now, which is basically just a very long T-pin. So again, I'm going to reach into my spare pins here, and I'm going to pick a pin that looks long enough that I can make a T-pin out of. We'll poke through the other side, but still give me room for a top. So I need one a little bit longer than that. Let's try this guy. Alright, so this should be our inner. And you just chuck it up in the vise, and just like we made a T-pin last time, except for you're going to take it back pretty much all the way to the jaws here. So I'm just going to try from the side, go all the way in, and see what it looks like. Now we're flush with the jaws, but you can see this is very uneven here and a little bit thicker than what we actually need. So I'll take the file and I'll bring it down to the right level, and we will check it with the collar. So I get pretty good at eyeballing these. That's about perfect. That is actually perfect. We got about the right amount, about a millimeter, maybe up to 1.5 millimeters sticking out the bottom. And it comes nice and flush to the top. So I'll back this out a little bit and we'll clean up that edge. We'll clean up the shaft. And then I will also round this part that hits the shear line. I'm going to round it a little bit with the file, because if it's nice and sharp, it's actually going to catch on the plug on the cylinder, and it's going to, you know, give you a lot of clicking in the plug and stuff. If you round this, it makes it a lot nicer when you put the key in. So as you saw, I rounded the end there. It's almost like a bullet tip kind of thing. It makes it just really nice when it passes over the key pin. And I'll put it back in here, the small side in, and then I will throw a serration up in here. Finish it up with the sandpaper. And there we go. We have a very beautiful inner pin for our pin and pin. We put the whole thing together. That is what we have. So I'll chuck it up in the vise temporarily here, and hopefully you can see there's the serration on the top, our shaft, our 2 serrations on the collar, the reduced diameter, and then the T-pin that it ends up in. Very nice pin. We'll take a closer look at this after, like the rest of them. So that was driver number 1. Driver number 2 is for our overset trap. It's so small, I'm not going to do anything to this, guys. Also, you want it to be a standard pin, and you want to put lower spring pressure in that one because you want it to be easy to overset. So there's that. Let's go with pin 3. And pin 3 we'll make a spool. So again, to make the spool, I just make probably about 3 serrations in this one, and then I take the middle out with the hand file. So tighten it down good, put in a few serrations, and remove the middle. About to lose the pin, but that's fine. Instead of waiting until I lose it, I'll chuck it back up now. Finish it off. And like before, I'm just going to finish it off with the saw blade. Pay attention to the edges on the inside of the spool because they tend to kind of like radius out, and you want it to be actually a hard 90. So we'll just push into the corner a couple times with the saw, and it should fix it right up. You saw me scrape back and forth in the middle there. That's just to kind of even things out. And it works pretty good. So we will pull this out a tiny bit, and we will hit it with a sandpaper, which you want to do with every pin. So that's our spool. And notice one side is a little bit bigger than the other. I'm going to see if I can make a T-pin on the end of this spool. T-pin spools are kind of a beast to deal with. So I like to make them whenever I can. And for that I'm just going to, again, put a serration in it and take the rest down with a file. So. Alright, now, and because of course it's a T-pin, and that means it's very sharp on the bottom, we're going to want to put a little bit of a radius on that so it doesn't catch on the plug. Again, just like a 45, and kind of roll it over the edge. That just takes the sharpness out of there and makes it so it won't catch. And now we just want to clean it up with the sandpaper. We have a nice spooled T-pin. Put that in the vise, you guys are in the jaws so you guys can see it. Hopefully. There we go. So as you can see, sometimes if I want to clean that inner portion up even more, which I have been known to do, I'll grab a piece of sandpaper here and I'll cut a very, very thin strip out of it, and I'll just sand it. And that just polishes up the center, makes it look even better, but it really doesn't do much for the functionality. Like I said, we'll take a look at all these after. We are on number 4, and number 4 we're going to do a wedding cake. Wedding cake's one of my signature pins. I love making them. I love throwing them into locks. And a wedding cake is just a step T-pin. So lately I've been mixing them up and putting serrations in with them and turning them into weird things. But this time we're going to do a straight up wedding cake. So first what I'll do is I will put in, wrong tool here, I'll put in a few serrations, and these will be the beginnings of my segment. So I'll put in 2 serrations and then I'll show you. Alright, so you notice I didn't go very deep with these, and that's because I'm going to do the rest of the work with the file. So I'll start on this first one, which is going to be our smaller, towards the shear line, and then I'll go up to the second stage after. Again, we're going to lose the pin every now and then. Alright, now we'll go up to the second stage. I actually put a third stage in while I was at it because I started my second stage a little deep, but all I did was bring it back a little bit and made another step to it. So as you can see, there's 3 steps there. And now Now I'm going to just take the short edge and kind of true them up, just to make sure they're all 90s and not on an angle. Alright, so we have a very nice looking pin there, and we're going to again contour that edge so it doesn't catch on the shear line too much. Looking pretty nice. And now I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to put a serration on the top of this one because there is enough room. Alright, let's get a serration in here. Losing the pin is something that happens quite a bit. Maybe not so much if you're using a Dremel, but I don't think you get the kind of control that I get out of this pin lathe. This pin lathe actually gives me way better control than any Dremel I've ever tried. So clean it up. Wedding cake with a serration on the top. So we will again take a look at that after. And what else do we need? Let's do a two-piece spool. So for a two-piece spool, we're going to need a collar, which means drilling a hole in this bad boy. See if I can get it on the first time again. Doesn't always work out like that. So if you see, it actually took me a couple tries to get it center. You saw it wobbling a little bit, and that means that you're not center. Now let's finish it off. As you can see, I wasn't as center with that one. It's not that big of a deal, but try to get as center as you possibly can. Clean up that edge. Flip it over. Clean up this other side. And this is going to be a spool, so it's not going to, it's actually going to be 1/2 of a spool because it's a two-piece spool. So I will reduce the diameter on most of this except for the end that's in the chuck there. Again, you don't want to go too deep with these because they are hollow. You don't want to go through. I'm going to finish it up with the edge of this smaller one just to make sure it's nice and square. that doesn't work, like it looks like this file might be getting a little old. I'm not getting the hard 90 I want. I'm just going to use the saw blade, but I'm going to be very careful. I'm going to go into it, not down on it. And that gives us the hard 90 we're looking for. Spool. I'll pull it out a little bit because we're going to clean this up. It looks like I can file down just a hair more. Alright guys, sorry about that. My camera crapped out on me halfway through the making of this pin right here, but that's alright. We got the most of it. You got to see me making this part, and it crapped out before I was able to do the inner, but the inner is the exact same as on pin 1 that we did. So you can watch that. You didn't really miss anything. The only thing you really missed was pin 6, and that is just serrations with a little bit of reduced diameter. Let's get in. Focus on these puppies here. Nothing really special. It's just a couple serrations with a little bit of a reduced diameter on one side. And it's kind of tapered in the middle of that spool area. I don't know if you could see that, but almost like an hourglass. But that's the only one you missed. Everything else you got to see, and see how I make them. This is the first pin that we did, the first driver we did, which is a pin-in-pin, reduced diameter at the bottom there, T-pin. So it makes it almost like a wedding cake with some serrations in it. So that was a pretty cool pin. And then we have our standard for our overset trap. We have our T-pin spool. We have our awesome wedding cake. I love making these. They act pretty cool on a lock. I love them. So it's our wedding cake with a serration. There's our 2-part spool. This one actually goes inside of that one. It's all very sexual, but it ends up in dropping a pin. Sorry, guys. Ends up in a spool, pin-in-pin spool, with a T-pin and a serration on the top. And yeah, everything else is just serrated. There's our pin-in-pin key pin, 2-part. It comes nice and flush on the top there, which is what you want. And yeah, lots of fun, guys. So I'm going to get this back together, and then I'll have to pick it and name it. From here, I'm not going to show you guys how to thread a core and stuff like that. There's many people that show you how to do it, and I don't do it any different. Actually, I do it by hand. I've seen a couple guys use a drill, but I just use the hand tap, and I just thread it. So I'll probably thread, in this one, I'll probably thread 1 and 6, and leave all the other ones. And yeah, that's about it, guys. I might counter mill 3. And I have a video coming up. I've already recorded it, just haven't uploaded it yet, on how I do the counter milling in these. But yeah, that's about it I'm going to do for plug alterations on this thing. Anyway, guys, yeah, sorry the camera crapped out at the end there, but you pretty much got it all. This is a, throw this in at the end of the video. This is a cross lock I got off of Amazon. Let's see if I can find. Only comes in and out one way. And as you can see, it's got bitting, different bitting on all 4 sides. I believe it's 10 pins altogether. And key only goes in one way. And yeah, it works pretty good. It doesn't catch or anything. Nice and smooth. So this should be fun. I got to pick it first before I can send it out. I haven't even tried yet. I just made it last night. But once I pick it and name it, then I'll send it out to some victim. Anyway, yeah, other than that, I have this other crazy thing that I made. Not sure what to call it yet. It is an 11 pin, and it works pretty nice too. And it's just not zero bitted, but it's I guess 3-bitted or 2-bitted right now. So I don't know how much I'm going to play with the bitting of this thing, but essentially it's pretty cool lock. Has pins coming in from the side. Actually, they're coming in from the side, and they rest on the side of the key here. So they are all the same level, but you do have to pick them to get them out of the way. If you don't, then the lock is not opening. So it does have to be picked, which is pretty damn cool. Anyway, still have to pick and name that one. And also all the pins in here are stock. There's no security pins in here yet, which I'll probably end up doing later. Yeah, any more questions, guys, let me know. I was thinking of doing a build on the on another pin lathe, show you guys how I make them, but there's not much to it. Sorry about the noise there. It's not much to it, guys. Basically, it's a cordless drill, boned out, and then screwed down to the top of this box with pipe strap. So this is inch and a quarter, inch and a quarter pipe ties that you'd use to, strap a pipe to the wall, and it holds it down. There's a switch and a power supply off to the side, and yeah, that's pretty much it. The rest is all just box. So I'm kind of hesitant to spend another, $20-$30 on a cheap drill to bone it out to do that. I don't know. Maybe I will someday. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Later.